Renowned columnist and senior analyst Mr. Kashif Mirza wrote in his latest column, Saudi-Iran Restoration of Ties, a Victory for Dialogue. China's successful brokering of a détente between Iran and Saudi Arabia forced the United States into the awkward position of applauding a major Middle East accord secured by its main geopolitical rival. The landmark deal is a diplomatic win for China in a region where geopolitics has been dominated by the United States. Kashif Mirza further added that China mediates Iran-Saudi Arabia détente, raising eyebrows in Washington. Arch rivals Iran and Saudi Arabia agree to end years of hostilities and restore relations in deal. The regional rivals are expected to reopen embassies within 2 months as they re-establish ties and a security agreement after Beijing talks. After decades of U.S. failures in the region, China takes a turn as Middle East power broker. Iran and Saudi Arabia have agreed to re-establish diplomatic relations, in the joint statement from Saudi Arabia and Iran, which said the two countries had agreed to respect state sovereignty and not interfere in each other's internal affairs. The statement also said Riyadh and Tehran had agreed to activate a security cooperation agreement signed in 2001. Kashif Mirza stressed that the landmark deal is a diplomatic win for China in a region where geopolitics has been dominated by the United States. The United States is a major defense provider to Saudi Arabia, including Patriot missile defense batteries. But allowing China to broker the diplomatic deal would threaten that relationship. America's Arab allies in Saudi Arabia and the broader Persian Gulf often lament the criticisms they receive from Washington over human rights abuses and a lack of political freedoms and elections, complaints they do not receive from Beijing. U.S. Central Command, which has thousands of U.S. troops to the kingdom and elsewhere in the Middle East, will continue to work closely with its regional partners to advance a regional security architecture. On its face, the agreement achieves priorities that the United States has long sought, as tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia have threatened the stability of the region and fueled catastrophic conflicts from Syria to Yemen, and it would lead to an end to the war in Yemen, which has pitted a Saudi-led coalition, backed by American-made jets, against the country's Iranian-backed Houthi militants. Kashif Mirza further pointed out that for years, the United Nations called the conflict the world's worst humanitarian disaster, but the country has enjoyed a rare reprieve from fighting since April when a truce sponsored by the United Nations went into effect. Though the truce expired in October, the peace has largely held, and back-channel talks between the Houthis and the Saudis have resumed. Saudi Arabia cut diplomatic ties with Iran in 2016 after the Saudi embassy in Tehran was attacked and burned by Iranian protesters angered by the kingdom's execution of a prominent Shiite cleric, Sheikh Nimr Bakr al-Nimr. The cleric had emerged as a leading figure in protests in Saudi Arabia's eastern province, a Shiite-majority region in the Sunni-majority nation. Kashif Mirza urged that anything that lowers the temperature between Iran and Saudi Arabia and lessens the possibility of conflict is a good thing. Shia-majority Iran and Sunni-majority Saudi Arabia support rival sides in several conflict zones across the Middle East, including in Yemen, where the Houthi rebels are backed by Tehran and Riyadh leads a military coalition supporting the government. China is a top purchaser of Saudi oil, and has a big interest in not seeing the regional security situation descend into chaos, such as in 2019, when the waterways of Hormuz were the sites of different explosions and attacks. The U.S. playing no role in this agreement, it has been common to hear anti-American sentiments in Iran, but from at least the fall of 2019 onwards, there is also some disappointment and some increasing skepticism inside Saudi Arabia towards the role of the U.S. in that region. China played a role shows where global power is shifting, and a meaningful change in how Chinese President Xi Jinping conducts Middle East policy. Iran and Saudi Arabia are in opposition across the Middle East, in the tragic proxy war in Yemen, where more than 150,000 people have died, as well as in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. Since then, Iran's pursuit of nuclear enrichment has led Saudi Arabia to seek a civilian nuclear program. Regardless, it's a promising sign for stability in the region for the short term, less so for U.S. influence in it. Kashif Mirza further appraised that indeed, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman conducts foreign policy as the kingdom brings China and Iran closer, in pursuit of security outside traditional Western allies. Saudi has also a preference for an alternative world order that is dominated by the likes of Xi and Russian President Vladimir Putin. China is the largest trading partner of the Gulf and most of the Middle East, and it has a real stake in an easing of tensions. Looking ahead, Saudi Arabia made a strategic choice here and elsewhere. It's looking to join the BRICS grouping of developing countries and take on observer status at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It indicates that the kingdom wants to focus on domestic economic development over geopolitical conflicts at present, particularly as conflicts in Syria and Yemen settle into stalemate and Iran's leaders are preoccupied by domestic unrest. Biden and the U.S. would never agree to Saudi conditions of nuclear power and security guarantees, and Saudi Arabia is unlikely to agree to a real peace deal with Israel. Kashif Mirza concluded that removing misunderstandings and the future-oriented views in relations between Tehran and Riyadh will definitely lead to improving regional stability and security as well as increasing cooperation among Persian Gulf nations and the world of Islam for managing current challenges, whereas it's hoped that China will continue to play a constructive role in handling hotspot issues and demonstrate responsibility as a major nation. It's also a potentially encouraging sign that countries in the region can pursue such initiatives without requiring lots of goodies and guarantees from the U.S.